Imagine being charged with more than 100 alleged financial breaches. You spend years being investigated. You finally go through a 10-week hearing. The hearing finishes, and then nothing. No verdict, no punishment, no clearing of your name. Just more waiting. That is the situation Manchester City find themselves in right now. City were charged by the Premier League back in February 2023. The case went to an independent commission in September 2024. The hearing finished in December 2024. And now in August 2026, we're still waiting for the verdict. That's more than 3 years since the charges were announced. And even the Premier League's own chief executive has admitted the process has taken longer than expected. So the question is, why is this taking so long? And what exactly is happening behind the scenes? Let's break it down. First, let's clear up something. You will hear this case described almost everywhere as Manchester City's 115 charges. That's because 115 alleged breaches were announced when the Premier League charged City in February 2023. But the numbers can get confusing because the allegations have subsequently been reported as being as high as around 130 after amendments. The important thing isn't really the number, it's what the allegations are about. The Premier League accused Manchester City of breaking financial rules over a period stretching from the 2009-10 season through to 2017-18. The allegations cover several areas. The Premier League says City failed to provide accurate financial information. There are allegations concerning sponsorship revenue and the club's financial position. There are also allegations relating to payments made to players and managers. There are allegations concerning UEFA's financial regulations. And then there are allegations that Manchester City failed to cooperate with the Premier League's investigation. City have consistently denied all the allegations. And that is extremely important because Manchester City have not been found guilty of these charges. This is an ongoing case. So when you see people online saying that City have been proven guilty, that's simply not accurate. There has been no final verdict. Here's the thing people sometimes forget. The 2023 charges weren't the beginning of the story. The Premier League had already spent around 4 years investigating Manchester City before the charges were announced. So we're talking about an investigation that began years before the public even knew the full details. Then, in February 2023, the Premier League officially referred City to an independent commission, but the hearing didn't actually begin until September 2024. That hearing lasted around 10 weeks. Both sides presented evidence. Lawyers argued their cases, witnesses and experts were involved, and the commission had to consider an enormous amount of material. Eventually, in December 2024, the hearing ended. At that point, surely the verdict couldn't be too far away. Well, it was. This is where things get complicated. The Premier League isn't simply deciding whether Manchester City are guilty. The case was sent to an independent commission. That means the commission is responsible for examining the evidence and reaching the decision. Premier League Chief Executive Richard Masters has previously said that the independent panel is in charge of the process and its timing. And in August 2026, Masters admitted that the verdict has taken longer than expected, but he still couldn't provide a timetable for when the decision will arrive. So the Premier League can't simply walk into the commission's office and say, "Come on, hurry up." At least that's not how the process is supposed to work. The whole point of an independent commission is that it makes its decision independently. And considering the potential consequences, you can understand why the process has to be incredibly thorough. Think about what the commission is dealing with. The allegations cover roughly 9 seasons. We're talking about financial accounts, sponsorship agreements, player contracts, manager payments, UEFA regulations, Premier League regulations, and allegations about whether information provided to investigators was accurate. Then you have to look at what the rules actually said at the time, because a rule that existed in 2010 might not be identical to the rule that existed several years later. The commission isn't just asking, did something happen? It may have to ask, what exactly happened? What evidence proves it? What did the rules require at the time? Was the information inaccurate? Was it deliberately inaccurate? And what should happen as a result? Now multiply that across more than 100 allegations. Suddenly you can see why this isn't something that can be decided overnight. But here's where the criticism comes in. The hearing finished in December 2024. It's now August 2026. That's a very long time to wait for a verdict, and that's why football fans are getting increasingly frustrated. If you're a Manchester City supporter, you might be thinking, how long are we supposed to wait before we know whether these accusations are true? And if you're a rival fan, you might be thinking, how can Manchester City continue competing for trophies while this enormous case remains unresolved? Both sides have a point, because while the legal process has to be respected, football doesn't stop. Manchester City have continued playing. They've continued signing players. They've continued competing for trophies. And their entire recent era remains surrounded by this giant question mark. That's the problem with a case taking this long. The uncertainty becomes part of the story. Now here's where we need to be careful. You'll see claims online that Manchester City are deliberately delaying the case. You'll also see people claiming the Premier League is deliberately delaying it. But unless there's evidence to prove either claim, we shouldn't present speculation as fact. What we actually know is this. The investigation took years. The hearing took around 10 weeks. The hearing finished in December 2024. And the independent commission still hasn't published its verdict. The Premier League says the independent process controls the timing. Manchester City continue to deny wrongdoing. That's what we know. Everything else needs to be treated with caution. And honestly, that's one of the biggest reasons this story has become so controversial. The less information people get, the more they speculate. This is the part that makes the case so important. Because if Manchester City are found guilty of serious breaches, the consequences could be enormous. Potential sanctions could include financial penalties or sporting sanctions. There has even been speculation over points deductions or more severe consequences. But here's another important point. There isn't a simple menu sitting on a Premier League website saying 10 charges equals this punishment. The commission would have to consider the findings and determine the appropriate sanctions. And whatever punishment is imposed could potentially lead to another legal battle. Because if Manchester City believe the commission has reached the wrong conclusion, they can challenge it through the relevant appeal process. So even if the verdict arrives tomorrow, that might not actually be the end. It could simply be the beginning of the next chapter.